So we are live.
Are we live? So we're live on YouTube, right?
Live on YouTube.
That's awesome. Hi, welcome, Burnout Studios. Today we'll be reading Chapter 13 of Shattered Time,
I can't believe
the novels. I'm not sure what Bruce is going to be drawing. We have. It's not a new studio, and he moved it to a new room. So this it's a bigger room, and the cameras are set up so that we can. It's closer, obviously. The microphones are closer to us. Everything is.
Everything's right in our face.
Right in our face. Really well set up, I think. Bruce and I are sitting across from each other now instead of. I used to sit kind of behind him, so when he would talk to me, he would actually turn away from the camera. This way, when we talk to each other, I'm at least, staring, past the camera, So yeah,
Fellow appreciates the reach around.
So yeah, but yeah, it's a nice new room. I was telling him, I mean, at my house, I do have a room that is really not being used that we can do the same thing in, but it would mean moving all this equipment to my house, and I don't know if Bruce would be able to live without all this equipment.
Well,
he'd be at my house all day.
yeah, that would be the only thing is I would be. Which
not that I would care.
Isn't like the end of the world, but I mean, the commute would be tough.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
But oh gosh, that turned out really good. What? So I guess if you got young viewers, which you probably shouldn't. I don't know why there'd be young viewers on this, but
what, you're going to show off some art here? That looks great.
So
that is the mech driver for everybody that
I went through and I did some more work on it, and
looks really good.
Added some nice skin tones in there, or some undertones, and turned out fairly nice. I like it.
Looks good.
And did you know?
Did I notice what, the tattoos?
Yeah.
No, but what does it say?
Oh. It's our logo. It's shattered. It's that up there.
I honestly don't think that she would have that tattooed on her, but that's funny.
That's awesome, right? That's just freaking awesome, right? So just having some fun there.
It's been we kind of skipped a week because I didn't have a real day off last week. I mean, I actually normally my days off fall on during the weekdays, but for some reason I lucked out and got a weekend off, and I spent that with my kids. So sorry, but yeah, we're back. We'll do Chapter 13 and stuff. Any relevant news stuff that we should talk about, or just skip that?
Yeah. I know you had some stuff you wanted to talk about. And you want to talk about Amazon.
Yeah, I was not really very happy about hearing that kind of stuff in the news, that they're basically doing digital book burning because that kind of affects us.
Yeah. Well, we've had this conversation a couple times,
right?
And I've been kind of.
It affects us hardcore.
I've been kind of. I don't know, how would you? I guess you would say I've been conspiracy theorist. I guess we're not supposed to say that on YouTube. They get you de-ranked when you say those words,
right?
Apparently, but I've been a little con of the spirit of the seas about stuff like that. You know what I mean? Because not exactly. Well, ours. I mean, And it's no fault of Marty because he wrote this. A lot of this stuff's historical, anyways.
Right.
So a lot of it, isn't exactly as diversified as what the normal climate today wants.
Even if ours is considered controversial, our stories are considered controversial today, it doesn't matter. They literally banned 8 books of Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss.
How on earth is that hate speech or controversial at all?
I don't know. Mark Twain.
I mean, this is the most retarded thing I've ever heard in my life.
I think they've taken To Kill a Mockingbird off. Anywhere where the N-word is mentioned. But not that I want to use the N-word or advocate uses of it. I find it funny. I had this conversation with my wife a couple of times, it wasn't in the 80s. I know in the 80s and the 90s, there was already people saying that the Holocaust never happened.
Yeah.
And why? Because you got rid of a lot of the, you don't want to, they didn't want to show it because that was hate, whatever.
Right.
So now we're doing the same thing with slavery. And in about 30 years, you can legitimately claim that it never happened, and they will not be able to show you proof that it did.
Right.
Because they will have burnt every
shred of evidence. Yeah.
It got to be about the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. These people are...
Because that's, we've talked about great stories and great movies and stuff on here because that's, what we do. It's funny because that's one of the other things that I was talking to other people that listen to the podcast, friends of mine and stuff. One of the things that I thought was cool because I think we've kind of hit on something that nobody else is doing. We're reading a book that hasn't been published yet in an effort to, first of all, get the content out, and also it helps me edit. And I thought this is a kind of a great tool to do this. And but I don't know of anybody else that's doing it on YouTube or any other podcast. And so I thought of, in the future, after we've gone through all the stories that I've written, offering this opportunity to other authors, other aspiring writers to come on, read their story, talk to us about the story, get the excitement out there, and
Yeah, that'd be fun.
But
we definitely have to have a better setup for that because I can barely get 2 microphones and 2 cameras working at the right time. In fact, I can see that already I have a little delay in mine. Stupid cameras. My system's not, it's 5 years old, 5, 6 years old, but it's not weak.
Right.
But in order to do this proper, man, the setups they have now to do these things, like the pro gamers and stuff like, they have one computer they game on, then one computer does all the recording, and the streaming, the recording and the putting out, and it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
And then you see some guy like Nick Merckx, and you see his setup. He's got a grotto in his down underneath that's awesome. They went in this huge, cool office set. They got all these computers in there. He's got his main rig, and then he's got a row of like friends of people want to come over and play with him. He's got 6 and 6 for LAN, and then he's got an upstairs setup too. Because he streams, he's got this awesome studio downstairs, and then everything he does it's upstairs, so you can see the family and look out the window and watch them play in the pool and stuff. And it's like, but this thing is, it's legit. It is so awesome. It's like, and I've talked with Marty about this, and it's kind of a little weird, but it'd be nice if we got a development deal and stuff like that, and you had that little bit of cash, and it's getting harder and harder now, but it'd be nice to find like an acre of land that we could build 2 houses on, and then in the middle or somewhere build a studio, an outside studio where you could have our studio in there. We could have our workstations. Then we could have a secondary spot just for podcasting. We can invite people to do that. We could podcast from our workstations too. And then it'd be nice, and then have an area in the back where you could even, if you did a little barndominium type thing, and then in the back you have a gym set up, and you could have, it'd be so cool.
Do like Joe Rogan have a sauna?
Yeah. You have a sauna back there. You got a ton of stuff in there, so it's cool. Right. What would be nice is and working from home is great, but it's tough sometimes. You get so distracted with other stuff, and so it'd be nice to go, but it's nice not to have to commute.
Right.
Terrible spots, but if a workstation, you have your podcasting booth, you have a couch with a couple TVs up, you could play some game on it if you wanted, type thing.
Right.
You could, there's a little kitchen in there, a bathroom.
But one of the things, because when I started hearing, because it's funny, the first thing that happened when I started hearing that, they were digitally deleting books and stuff like that, and banning, Dr. Seuss books and stuff, it just started me thinking more and more about a town called Liberty, and so I started writing more and more on my whiteboard at home. I have all these different ideas that just popped into my head as soon as I started reading all these stories about, all these news articles.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh crap! And so I'm writing down all these different story lines for a town called Liberty, because I don't think I had anything about in that dystopian future about
what you could content.
What you could read and what you could say. Because, just, because we're literally, on the floor of the house, you can't use male and female words to describe your parents or whatever. You can only say parent. You can't say father or mother.
Really?
Yes. I know. So what I want to do is I want to do one storyline in a town called Liberty where it's all about words you can't say.
Yeah. Well, that was all. I
know.
That's a rabbit hole.
Just
horror.
And the thing is and every time something like this happens, where it's thrust into the main, not the mainstream media, but when it's thrust into the news, I still think we need to finish up at least one of those Town Called Liberty books and get that to somebody like a Glenn Beck or somebody who or the Daily Wire, or somebody that has the ability to go, yeah, this is good, and we'd love you to do this under our
distribute it for us.
Yeah. Because you hear these guys, Ben Shapiro, all of these people, they not that's funny. Glenn Beck and Ben Shapiro, they'd say all the time that there's got to be more voices than just theirs, and hopefully, and Ben Shapiro proved that he's willing to put his money where his mouth is with the Gina Carano thing.
Yeah, and, the movie before that, the movie he just did.
Right. So, I mean, I don't think it would be a crazy idea to ask. I mean, it's never a crazy idea to ask, but
Well, we could always figure out a way to put a little team together and pitch it to them, see if maybe they give us some startup money to go make it.
Because there's got to be more voices than just theirs, and Bongino has cancer.
Does he? Aggressive type or?
Don't know.
Don't know. He hasn't said.
Right.
Mm.
So it's like, great.
That's right. I knew he was sick. But,
right.
Now that I think about
it's like, they don't have to silence the voices when cancer is doing the job for them.
Right.
So, anyway.
Glenn's getting old.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I know. So yeah.
That's why I keep telling the wife. She's ever since Leland came. Now all of a sudden she starts paying attention to this stuff. For the longest time it was just me pay attention to this type of stuff. But now she's actually, and she keeps saying about stuff has to change. And what I said, well, the only way it's going to change is people have to make it change. It's like, well, you want things to change? Well, have you thought about running for your local city council? Right. And she just looks at me like, I was like, well, that's where it starts, right? Right. And at the local levels, where really, look at what the governor of Texas just did. He just said "F you" to the Fed, right? Right. So, but everybody is the same thing I say about the cops too. Everybody always says they have to be better. They need to be better. Well, you know what? If you think that your moral authority is more important, is higher than theirs, because you're saying then fill out an application. Right. Get off your ass, fill out an application, and go make it better. Otherwise, live with what's out there, because you're not going to change it. Right. And changing policies doesn't do anything. That just makes people try to hide harder. Right. So if you want to be you want good cops on the force, then you go be a good cop. Yep. And if you can't get a cop job here, go to somewhere else where you can, and then transfer back. You can't say, stop. Go and do it if you want it to change. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I know that's not that much time off the clock, but yeah, I got one for Marty. I've been waiting to see what his reaction is going to be to this. So you know about the new Blade movie?
Yes.
And he's excited about. He loves Blade.
Well, first of all, let me rephrase. I'm a huge Wesley Snipes fan.
Right.
Tell
me how much you love Blade.
It is him that brought Blade to life. Mm-hmm. I don't care what anybody says. Because when they did the first Blade movie, it was a shoestring budget, and he's the one that made it happen. He's the one that brought that to life. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, so what's your love of Blade? I mean, what?
Well, I mean, as far as the comic books and stuff, I've read a few, so it doesn't go as deep as like
kick-ass action.
Well, yeah, my. Blade, even in the comics books, has always been about sword fighting and the cool martial arts shit.
Right. I mean, just think of how cool Logan was, right?
Right.
And how cool that was, and how cool Deadpool was, and all that was because of how awesome Blade was back.
Because Ryan Reynolds deserves all the credit for bringing Deadpool, the real Deadpool, to the screen.
Right, and he probably got all of that mentorship from Wesley Snipes back on Blade 3.
Right.
On how to fall in love with something, fall in love with the character, and how to bring it to the screen.
Right.
So, Blade, the new iteration of Blade is looking to have...
Are they fucking it up?
A PG-13 rating.
Great. PG-13 vampires. Good idea. Was this going to be made for TV, or was this actual movie?
No, this is for the theater.
Oh, jeez. I mean, I understand.
In fact,
I understand why they do that, because a bigger audience means more money. You know, Lucas did the same thing.
Yeah, but technically, you could say that about Deadpool, but it still had the audience.
Right. Deadpool had the largest viewership ever Besides Passion of the Christ.
Right. So Deadpool 3 is supposedly the only Marvel product
R-rated?
right now that will be R-rated in the future.
Wow.
There's no content that they have coming out that will be R-rated.
Jesus.
I mean, how can you have hacking and slashing and bashing and
the thing
all
is,
that stuff without a solid R rating?
Right, and it used to be, because, it's funny how we because the rating system is all done by Hollywood, for Hollywood, and it used to be that a PG-13, it was still pretty scandalous,
Mm-hmm.
You could show a side boob, you could show a nipple, but only one, for a few seconds and all this kind of stuff. They had all these different standards and stuff, and as far as violence, they didn't care about it. You could still show hacking and slashing and people dying. You just couldn't show gratuitous amounts of blood.
Right. Yeah.
But now it seems like PG-13 has been pushed down into the realm of PG. It's like, wow, okay.
I don't understand it.
So yeah, fun.
So I was gonna show you a video and just get your reaction to that. I don't know if we play it, if we'll get,
What were you going to show me, the trailer or something?
No, I was going to show you this this music video called Metal Batman Forever. You ever seen it?
I think so. It's Batman playing heavy metal music.
No, but it's a cartoon that they did to heavy metal music of Batman.
Because I saw this one where it's actual Batman on stage jamming out with a guitar, screaming into the microphone, and it's the kind of it's like Cannibal Corpse type stuff where you can't understand a damn thing he's saying because it's just going Which, don't get me wrong, I love Cannibal Corpse. Anyway.
I just don't. I know that people pause stuff so that you don't get a continuous recording and then talk, and they can somewhat get around copyright that way.
I don't know what that means. What do you mean? Oh, well, it should have been. This won't show up. I mean, if we're watching it, it won't show up, right?
Well, I can make it so they'll be able to see it.
Oh.
And then.
Well, I mean, if it's a copyright thing, we probably shouldn't.
All right. It's hilarious though. It's freaking hilarious. Let's just turn this off, put that back in. I don't know why that didn't pull the audio out. I should have. Huh. All right.
So, yeah.
I mean, I have some story stuff, but I don't know if we want to just leave that for later for us to talk about.
It's for Shattered Time?
Yeah.
Probably people wondered why I pointed at the wall. Last time we were out on the podcast, Bruce was talking about doing a thing on the wall to show the story arc. So he actually has it color coded. I'm believing that this is each
book.
Each book. So, yeah. I mean,
the only problem is I can't see it from here.
We've been working on it for so long that we got it fairly well dialed in. But as we talk on the podcast, things change here, things change there. But that's the great thing about it. What's funny is I didn't say this last time we were talking about it, but really the 4 novels, even though the 4 novels truly aren't done yet,
right?
I mean, the first and the second one are pretty much done. The third one was a work in progress, and that's when I decided to, the outlines are there, but that's when I decided to stop and search for an artist that could do the graphic novel. These provide the backstory and everything for the graphic novels. It's funny. It's almost like somebody made a movie, and then somebody's remaking the movie.
Made a movie and then write a book about it.
Right.
Or wrote the book of the movie.
Right. Somebody. Yeah. That's that's a better analogy. The books are there, but now we're making a movie of those books, and instead of following the linear story of the books, it's kind of the Quentin Tarantino jump around type thing.
Right. Yeah, I'll have you go over it again at the end, or maybe I don't know if we'll do it on stream or not, because although I think it's kind of cool to do it on stream, it kind of shows the process and the progress of it. You know what I mean? It's like one thing that I watched enough videos of people talking about how to take you through the story structure, the story arcs of things, but to actually show people doing it in process, I think is different. I haven't seen anybody do that yet. Actually have their layout and then be like, well, maybe this is this or that's that, and does this work here? Does this work there?
Right.
Yeah, that's some of the questions I have.
Showing where we're killing our babies and where we're not.
Yeah, kind of where you kill your darlings, or where you reposition them.
Right.
Where you cry a lot because
that was a good scene, and goddamn it, why'd we lose it?
Well, yeah, and I think that's where I was gonna go with this. It's not so much killing scenes; it's reworking them to make them move the story along. Because part of the thing that I have that I keep getting stuck on, and when I even as I put all that up, and I just stood over there and I read all of them out. It's like cool thing, but it's just the same thing over again. And then it was like, oh, that's interesting. What about that? But then nothing happens with that character. Like, it's like, well, what was that even in there for? Because so for me, and you explained this to me before about the book, but like up there's a scene with this Cardinal Bishop Frank, Bishop Frank, and it's literally, I don't know why.
Right.
There's like it doesn't go nowhere. He doesn't do anything.
Right.
And
yeah, as I explained to him, that's actually from book 2, in the linear story, and the reason that he's there is because when Lucius leaves the elven world and goes back to the human world to teach or to continue teaching magic, his character is really just to show that during that time period the church had all the power, and even the Duke of Normandy wouldn't do anything against the church. Because when he goes to ask William, hey, can I teach magic, because they were going to kill Lucius when they first met him, because he used magic, and they freaked out and thought he was the devil, and so they were going to kill him, but William, being a powerful man, saw a use for him and said, okay, you can teach, but you have to teach street children that have no parents, orphans, people that don't matter.
Yeah, see, some of that was lost.
Right.
I found all that out because we have a cutscene to where he goes to find this kid Garvin, and after not having had that backstory, I was like, he just looks like he's a creeper.
Oh, he is a creeper.
I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, why is he stalking this 12-year-old kid or this 11-year-old kid? You know, but
right. He is.
My idea was it would be interesting to make Frank Len's high priest.
Shit. I don't know.
And so one of the things I'll just get into it right now. So as I was looking up there, like I said, a lot of it. See, like there's 2 training things up there. We only need 1.
Right.
Blah blah blah. There's all these different scenes, and I understand there's these scenes of cool mixing of time. And unless we just do that all at one time, bam, 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 like just panel. Right. There, you've seen it all, cool. Otherwise, I thought about having those scenes, but they're progressing storylines differently. So my thing is the book about? Because you wanted to ask me about a book that I was writing. What's it about?
Right.
And I said, this is like you can't just have cool scenes. It's got to be about something.
Right.
So is it about magic? Is it about the 7 deadly sins? Or is it about control? Or what is your book
Shattered
ultimately about?
Well, I mean, ultimately what, our goal was, is to create a new universe that, that can be used as an RPG.
Right. Well, we're creating a universe, but as far as this story goes,
well,
what's the message in it that you're wanting to?
Well, I mean, really, it's more about the bad guy. I mean, the bad guy's Len wants to create this world where all these different wars are happening together, so he can become more powerful than he already is. And he's traveled through time and changed all this stuff and created this world. And so in a lot of ways, it's like a zombie movie. This has happened, and now they either have to try and change it back or at least survive.
Right. Okay. But I guess I mean.
So Lucius is ultimately trying to reverse the process, but
well, that's
like what we've said over and over. Part of me doesn't want him to reverse the process.
Well, see, that's the plot. But what's your underlining, like, message?
Well, there's no message as far as like with a town called Liberty. There's definitely messages in that, and they're more glaringly obvious. But no, this is just more of a survival type thing. The world's fucked and is in chaos, and they're just trying to fix it.
Okay.
Or trying to survive it.
I get that. I just
because this is literally a world at war.
Right. But you can have a world at war, but our character has to have purpose and reason, right? What Lucius has to have, like, and I've said this before. Why does he feel a need to stop Len?
Because Len caused it.
But why does he care? Why is he the hero? Why? What's his motivation for actually?
Part of it is because one of the things that happens right before the opening scenes is because this gets into book 4, which hasn't really been written, but in book 4, Lucius. In book 4, Len, Lucius, and all of these different knights are basically in the Crusades. It's that time period, when the Crusades were happening, and people were going around, and it was all in the name of Christian faith, et cetera, et cetera. So William allows Len to train a bunch of knights in magic, the elemental knights that you see shot in the very first scene. Mm-hmm. Quite a few of them, anyway. Those knights get trained rather quickly and crudely to be able to do magic, and they go on all these different campaigns to expand the kingdom, etc. And they're, brutal, triumphant, wonderful, and at one point, Len, unbeknownst to everybody, discovers the death element. He notices the energy leaving the human bodies, and that he can capture it and do all kinds of shit with it. So he discovers this, and he writes to William and asks him if he can take a sabbatical. And so he's allowed to, kind of go on leave or a holiday type thing. So at that moment, the knights are really doing nothing. They're kind of on a vacation also. And during that time, an affliction hits London, and a plague starts spreading across London. People are found with big blotchy black spots all over their body, and the people are dying. And so Lucius, being considered one of the wisest men in the kingdom, Lucius is tasked with the of finding out a cure, or finding out where the plague is coming from. And historically, the plague was blamed on rats. But anyway, I like to work with history and change it. So what actually Lucius finds is that when he talks to people, all the people that he talks to, the people that are been afflicted with this disease, tell him that shadow people are visiting him during the night, and every time the shadow person touches them, that spot on their body is rotting off. And so Lucius decides to, test this theory, and is laying in the hospital with all these other sick patients, and he's pretending to be sick. And lo and behold, sure enough, one night he witnesses this black figure literally come up out of the ground and start, touching people and causing all this, chaos. And he fights the black figure, and during the combat, because this figure is using magic, the elemental magic, but is also doing stuff that he's never seen before. He can create clouds of poisonous gas and all kinds of nasty shit that he's never seen before. And so he more or less loses the fight, but during the conflict, it's revealed that the black figure is Len. And then Len disappears, and so that's when Lucius goes and finds the elemental knights and tells them that they have to go find Len and stop him from doing whatever he's doing. And so they're on a mission at that point to go and find Len. They go to where his holiday house was, or whatever you want to call it, where he was having a sabbatical, and they find his diary, and the diary reveals that he had discovered the death element, and it tells all about the experiments that he was doing, and all the combinations of things. I've explained this before in the first podcast, but just so I can reiterate. When you if you combine the elements of air and water, you can create lightning and different things, And so if you can if you combine life and death, you can actually split time, and that's where this story kind of originated from. Anyway, so he starts combining all these different elements, and like I said, air and the death element, he can create these poison clouds and shit like that. And eventually the book talks about that, or the diary says that he's combined the life and death element, and that's when he first discovers that he can travel through time all the way to the birth of the person that he was using for the life element. Mm-hmm. And so and then that's where the diary ends, and so they're trying to get that diary back to the king, or William, the king, and then all hell breaks loose. Basically, all the time shatters, and they run into a giant mech, and they run into a bunch of Nazis, and etc. So, in a way, Len is he's one step ahead of them, because now that he's shattered time, even if Lucius gets this information to the king is insignificant now. Because, I
almost wonder what would happen if you did the opening with the mech,
mm-hmm.
mech with the Nazis, mech with the Elemental Knights, and instead of doing, man, that'd be so long. Damn.
Are you trying to include that fight scene between him and Lynn?
Well,
because I've often thought that needs to be in there somewhere.
Well, it's in there, but it's not till book 4.
Right.
And I don't want to change the story as much, but we got a great bad guy,
mm-hmm.
but we don't see him enough and don't know why he's bad.
Right.
You know what I mean? We don't know why he's terrifying, why Lucius needs to stop him, and why it's Lucius's job in the first place. Why is it's not my problem, you know? I mean,
well, honestly,
he didn't even care about Curse, right?
But
check, just a second before I lose my train of thought. What if I had that page break where it says often people,
right?
So what if we actually went all the way through all that crap,
mm-hmm.
that stuff, and where he does the flashback to Garvin,
mm-hmm.
it's actually the flashback to that. And we go
the fight.
We go 2 months earlier. And here are all the Elemental Knights rolling into a small little medieval town.
Right.
And they're all got the arm, they go into this inn,
mm-hmm.
and they're talking, people are telling them what's happening, whatever. And then they stake out the whole town like that. And he then has the run in, and then.
Right. Well, he doesn't have the run. He doesn't have the fight with him until later, and he's not with the Knights.
Well, I might just push it to there,
mm-hmm.
because then we see him, why he's so bad, why he's so terrifying,
right?
And then we come back to now, and then have him say something like at the end, and now he's brought death in record numbers all at one time. We cannot let him wield this kind of power.
Right.
And you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it's funny.
So now he has an actual reason.
Here's a spoiler for everybody watching. The quotes, like that quote, at the very beginning of the book,
mm-hmm.
the page break, which is, people believe that technology will destroy the world. I mean, you know this, but they don't.
Right.
All of that comes from the diary of Len. That's, they're just quotes or excerpts from that.
And while you were talking earlier, I wrote down another scene that I want to see. I want to see Len's journey of finding out how to crack time.
I would kind of like to do that too.
And where I would say he starts on his journey is with the Woodwatchers. Once again, just because they're so old.
How would he team up with the Woodwatchers? They literally hate him.
He doesn't. But he goes and maybe he fights some of them, and he takes control, and he forces information out of them, or he just goes and
because he is their prophecy.
He is the prophecy, but maybe they think Lucius is the prophecy.
No.
You know what I mean?
Man born of two races? No.
Right. So, yeah. But yeah, it's just because they're the oldest living thing, except for some other elves, right?
But I mean, they would definitely be involved, but not helping him.
Okay, but maybe there's still something that they're guarding, something. I don't know, but I want to see his what was the
his downward spiral into chaos?
No, not so much that. American Treasure? Was that what was the movies that Nicolas Cage did? Where he did the
National Treasure.
National Treasure. I want to see his National Treasure story of finding out how he learned how to time travel. It's got to be ancient. And if it's magic, it's
his experimentations with the death magic more or less looks like what the Nazis were doing to the Jews. It was just him experimenting and doing all these horrible things.
Okay. I mean, and then it's a fabric of time just happens to open.
Well, I mean, because he was fairly methodical about it. He was because just like I said already, you combine air and water and you create lightning. And he was just combining things just to see what would happen.
What if you did something with some death stuff, had a large thing, and it created a boom, whatever, and he's on death's door. He has a guy come over to let him heal from him.
Life.
And so he's got a large thing of death and some life and sometimes, and as he's happening, some little sliver of light starts to crack in front of him.
And then he walks through.
Well, just
a rift in time.
A little rift in time, and then from that, now I'm going to really ramp this up and see if I can.
Because
that'd be interesting.
Because one of the things that I like to compare this to, and I think it would be neat visually, is because in order to combine the life and death element, there has to be another person there. There has to be somebody that you can that offers their life energy, and so. When somebody dies, people often say that their life flashes before their eyes. That old tired cliche. Well, that's literally what Len would see when he touches that person and is absorbing their energy and using that and combining it with the death element. He literally sees their life flash before his own eyes, and he can choose where to stop on their lifeline. So he can go all the way back to their birth in time. Did that make any sense for all the viewers at home? I love that Bruce is studiously writing all this stuff down. But yeah, I mean, so that's the way I have
if I don't, I'll forget it.
That's the way I have it pictured in my mind. And I think it would work well. It would work a lot. It would be a lot easier in a movie, to see all this, life flashing before somebody's eyes. But, it would just.
I don't know. I could see it happening real easily, and then you do a full page layout type thing with this person's life, all these different time periods, with their different ages,
getting younger and younger and younger.
Yeah, or just and then just little spice of life type things happening, and then you have one. You pick whatever time you're going to pick. And then you take that and you put it down on a panel, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have Len
literally walk through,
step behind him, and walk in the same position. And then boom, right in. Right. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because, you know, there was that movie, God, what? I don't think it was Push, but there was a movie where this kid could, and it was Jump.
Jump.
Where he could look at a picture and he'd get there. So yeah, the same type of thing, where Len's literally, as he's absorbing their energy and their life energy, he can see their thoughts and he can just go straight back into that time period.
Right. But I think it'd be cool if you had to go through that person, you know, and then as you're standing doing the thing, all of a sudden this thing,
right?
This person
so
out in front of you.
Yeah, like you know, some life event like a wedding. He's about to say "I do," and all of a sudden Len pops out of his chest.
Exactly. That'd be freaking awesome.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I do.
Right. Oh, you know what though? Okay, so now that would be cool to actually do this and have it done to one of our heroes. And that violation for one of them is their like reason for doing some of this.
Because even if the older them loves Len, the younger them doesn't even know Len.
And just the
right,
you know.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a painful thing, but it would definitely be shocking enough to where
feel like you're having a heart attack.
But it would be real easy for him to convince somebody that he was a god.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Like, where'd you come from? Well,
inside.
Right. So yeah, you know, you can definitely see how Len could, but yeah, you're right in the fact that we definitely need to delve into.
Oh gosh, can you imagine him coming to somebody while they're praying?
Mm-hmm.
Do you hear me? Of course they do. He's a child, and he walks out,
right,
and stands in front of him and talks to him. Oh man,
mm-hmm.
That would
that would solidify your belief.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and then to use the terminology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that.
But
I'm here, child.
But yeah, I mean, you're right. We need to definitely delve into why Len is the bad guy, and why he is the ultimate bad guy.
Right. I mean,
because that's what we're trying to create is the ultimate bad guy. Len should make Darth Vader look like a pussy.
Right. and because of that, you know, a lot of these scenes need we need more Len. I think one of the guys that I was watching is like a lot of people fail to use the importance of their bad guy. Like they don't.
Right.
They just. So you have a bad guy to move the story along, and he's like, no. You need that juxtaposition of how good your guy is compared to the bad guy. You know, I mean, otherwise, like, why didn't Lucius? I mean, how many of us would look at a quasi utopia,
mm-hmm.
and then say, no, we got to go stop that guy?
Because
there's got to be some deep seated wound or something like that within Lucius that says, I have to stop him at all costs.
Well, I mean, you know, there is the, you know, trying to put the world back together, but at the same time, one of the things that, you know, because when I did the flashback there, you know, one of the reasons the flashbacks there, you know, at the beginning there is, you know, so I can introduce magic.
Mm-hmm.
Because magic isn't really introduced very much at the beginning, except for the whole flaming wolf thing, and the reader might not know what the hell is that? And so the the flashback with Garvin and Lucius, it was kind of an introduction of magic. But yeah, we can keep that one flashback, and then to further the reader's introduction to magic, we could definitely do like some of those fight scenes where Lucius is battling Len and different things like that, or even scenes where Len and Lucius are training the elemental knights. Although I think a fight would be better, be more entertaining anyway.
Well, I think.
But I don't think.
I don't know if you have to explain magic. You might
have to do enough to where it's kind of like the Matrix. You have to explain it enough to where the reader sheds disbelief. Because Neo just jumped from one building to another building. How did he do that? Well, the Matrix, just makes it, easily explained. So yeah, that's really the only reason, we do this kind of stuff.
Right, but you've already, you have them talk about him training elemental knights.
Right.
That he thinks there's already too many of them.
Right.
You've already established that they're being trained in magic and that magic exists. Lucius and Garvin doesn't explain the history of magic as much as Lucius and Mycno. Because Mycno really delves more into the culture behind the magic and everything. But even still, by expanding out the Nazi scene with more magic happening, we already established that, okay, there's magic in the system. Only a few have it. And then, boom, 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 this happens. I don't know. I don't know if you need the flashback for the training. Maybe.
Yeah. Another reason that I did the flashback was so Garvin could discover the life element.
Right. And like I said, like I was thinking before, is as he's trying to explain to other people what Len is doing with the death element, he can always start with telling how Garvin found the life element.
Right.
And the discipline and the training, guess that's needed. It's always nice, but that's something we could do somewhere down the line for you do like stupid trope type thing, but you have them train something so that it comes back. That's how he defeats something after, or somebody, they always do a stupid on TV shows all the time. They'll open up with, or a movie. You're training how to do one specific thing. And you're like, so what? Oh, well, that's how he's going to defeat the bad guy at the end because he has to learn how to use it or some stupid thing like that. But
no, I don't like that trope.
I know you don't like it, but sometimes
because
gotta be somewhat tropey.
No, that one's not necessary. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Because otherwise, like, that would totally break up that flow. There'd be such a beautiful flow. Right after they get done talking with her, then boom, 2 months ago.
Right.
And here these knights are going in, and they're talking. They're talking about how they're there to find out what's plaguing the town.
I think the first flashback should be, instead of to Garvin, it should be to, just a few months before, where it explains what their mission was to find Len, and they end up finding that diary.
Right. Well, to find the death, and then they do all that, boom, boom, boom. They had that battle, and his diary gets dropped, or they find where he was living, and they find his diary, and then in it says what is about to happen, and then we come back to the present, and it's like we have to get this to the king.
Which, you know, really makes, if you think about it,
the king, or actually, what's great is he says we have to get this to the king. And who's he talking about? Is he talking about the Elven King, or to William?
William. I mean, they're on the island. They're in Britain, so yeah.
Well, actually, you know, it'd be interesting because since it deals with magic, it would be fascinating that, like, you have Victor there after Angus is dead. Victor, you know, is like, we need to get this to the king. And Lucius, you're right, we do. But, you know, it's like, but which king? Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to bring the two together and have the Elven King and some of the, whatever who's left after the major bombardment.
Right.
We'll go out to, we'll go to Stonehenge or something where they put tents up around it and some motorhomes and battle, you know,
well, I mean,
made a makeshift headquarters.
Just that conversation in itself, you know, you could have them talking about, you know, so do we, you know, we need to get this to the king, you know, but just to have Lucius lament, you know, whether they're too late or not.
Right. Whether it's too late, which king to get it to.
Who could actually stop this because I just failed.
Right. I just failed. Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And then right at the end, as they go off,
bam.
I would have a crow in a tree watching it.
The Wood Watchers? Yeah.
I mean, just you know, just to kind of move things into
right.
a little trickle into the next.
Well, yeah. I mean,
next book.
That's that was one of the original thoughts that I had. To where anytime you saw a crow or some animal watching them, you know, just so the readers would go, what the hell's that animal doing? Why do they keep showing these animals? And then later, you know, book 2, book 3 or whatever, you see the animal change. Or
I could do that. Actually, I could actually put them in here and there in the stuff that, because Mignola was amazing at that. Mignola would have something happening, and then you just have a crow sitting on something. You're like, what the heck's with the ominous crow or the owl sitting over there?
Right.
But it's freaking amazing looking, and it's a great this quiet little story.
Right.
I can do something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think that you're right. That first scene, or you know, the first flashback needs to be more Lynn related. Because you know, I mean, you know, just that's the thing that's you know, with a zombie type movie where you know there's no main bad guy. You know, it's just the world is effed up, and you have to survive the whole thing. But this is kind of combining both of those things. The world is effed up, but there is a guy that did it.
Right. Well, you know, even with the good zombie movie, you look at those and there's still a character element behind the characters of why they're the ones that survived, why they're the ones who continue to survive to an extent. I mean,
yes and no. I mean,
you look at some, and some of them are, you know, they're selfish and dirty. Some are,
because like 28 Days, he wakes up in a hospital,
right?
And that was the same thing with The Walking Dead. You know, he wakes up in a hospital. I think,
but I think his goal was to find his family, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
I still think my favorite is 28 Days Later, though. I think that has the best story because it's not really zombies.
Right.
They're just infected, and so when you shoot them anywhere, they go down. So.
But what was great about that, but he still had an overriding goal.
Right.
Was to find his family, and that love of his family is what drove him.
Right.
To stay alive. No, I actually I think that'd be an awesome first book.
Mm-hmm.
And then we could pick up the next book. You could pick up the next book 5 years later. Or something.
Why so long?
Oh, I don't know.
Because I wanted to pick up the next book right at the Abraham Lincoln thing.
At the Abraham Lincoln thing? Yeah.
Yeah. Because the first book literally should end where, because Lucius and probably everybody else that's hanging out with him now, they have come to the realization that there really is no world leader.
No, well, I mean, somebody would eventually emerge, or we.
Right.
Well, my thing too. Well, like I said before, he says we got to take this to the king, right?
Right.
So if William is in London,
mm-hmm.
and we know with most disaster movies, London gets annihilated.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get there, and there's going to be no William to take the book to.
Right. And that pretty much is what happens.
So right. So my thing with that is you could go 5 years later, and we could pick right up with the samurai looking for a little girl or whatever. And that's the little girl he goes to save. Why he's looking for, I don't know exactly. But
when you're talking about
with the samurai with the android,
right.
The fight there,
yeah,
is pick up the story just boom right off the bat with that, and
but I don't see I don't see why we'd have to go to the 5-year thing.
Well, just
because I mean
just click some time off. Otherwise. Oh, you don't have to do 5 years.
No, I don't think that it'd be that important. The samurai thing, the reason I was having that happen at the same time was, everybody, because this is one of the things that I always thought was funny about like the zombie movie trope is, you take a whole planet, and the whole planet is affected by this zombie thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody on the planet has a different story that they're going through.
Right, yeah.
And I always thought that, it would be fun to do a zombie movie where it literally just showed one person's story for one episode and then another person's story for another episode. And you didn't, you may fall in love with one character or whatever, but, they may die from, in the first episode. And this is the same thing, was what I wanted to show was that it wasn't just this England that was going through this, thing. It was everywhere. It affected the entire planet. And so that's why I was picking and choosing, random stories here and there. And plus, I love samurai.
So do I. In fact,
right.
So check this out, though. So the way we just did book one
mm-hmm.
is actually a self-contained story for the most part.
For the most part, yeah.
For the most part, right?
Right.
And then if you did book two, you could do two characters or just one. But you could do the samurai story. You could go back to when time shattered,
mm-hmm.
and we have them fight the android and all that stuff, and
mm-hmm.
and you could go through a whole story line with him,
mm-hmm.
maybe, and then you could even do two of them. But if you did one per the first 6 books, picking different characters and telling these different kind of cool stories, but each one of them also has little stuff that ties Len in.
Trust me, Trust me, when I first wrote or thought of this, that was the exact idea I had, was doing different stories for all these different characters. But do you realize how many books that would be?
Well,
because eventually eventually all these characters get together.
Right, and then that would be book 8 or book 9, the final.
Right.
And we're all the little things that we've learned here and there about Len and all this stuff, all finally come to a fast, furious,
right.
revelation, battle, revelation, bam, 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 boom,
right.
type of thing. So when I was talking earlier about the 7 deadly sins, my idea is to make the bad guys one of the 7 deadly sins, or just have them.
You're so biblical.
Well, no, you.
I know.
It was just the idea that you could have one bad guy in them personify gluttony or whatever, and how that works for his empire or whatever type thing. And the only problem though is I only found 4 bad guys.
Well, that is one of the
excluding Len.
That is one of the other problems. And one of the reasons that we're.
But I had 10 good guys
that we're even talking about it is we need to definitely show more about Len and his travels, because we need to show the influence he's had on the past.
Right, and what would be great is, so in the first book, if we see the physical stuff that he does to the people with the plague type thing, maybe in Mariah's time and his story, we see a psychological torture of it. You know, you could go almost with the 7 deadly sins and show how he's perverting things in a certain way with each of the different characters. It'd be quite fascinating.
Right.
You'd probably slim down a couple of these. The Elemental Knights could be added in with Lucius.
Right.
But, I mean, because I have the Samurai, I have Paul and the mech driver together, Paul, that whole group, and the mech driver together. I had the Spanish captain, the sniper, the Vietnam soldiers, the Civil War guys, the Elemental Knights, McNo and Izzy.
Remind me of who the Spanish captain is again?
Yeah, the Spanish captain.
I wrote these things.
Spanish captain. The Spanish captain is the guy that finds the werewolves in the cowboy town.
Love that scene.
You have the soldiers in the Hummer, and then you also have the aliens. And I had the aliens on both sides, because there's probably going to be some good aliens and some bad aliens, right? So on the bad guys, I had Bishop Frank, the werewolf, the wood elves, and the aliens, and then land. But I mean, that's really.
So you want
all the bad guy.
You're saying that we need more backstory to show some of the high priests.
Well, I'm just thinking,
introduce some of them.
If your idea of, okay, now let's see, what does the samurai do about when this happened, and that's like book 2, his story and everything. Well, his story could be that attached to a wood elf or the aliens or something that deals with one of the 7 deadly. Because if Len, say he was greed at the beginning, and then his is gluttony, and we have a bad guy that is overarching or something, that's at least explaining how Len's manipulating things. And then in the next book, it's so-and-so's story, and then this one's so-and-so's story, you know what I mean? And then all that information gets weaved through, and you can have Lucius show up here and there at different times and talk to him, and then at the end, it's here's all the revelations and let's go. I don't know, does that work? Or do you...
Well, I mean...
I
agree that we have to establish more more of the influence that Len has had on the past, which means basically establishing some bad guys, some high priests that belong to his church. The 7 deadly sins thing, I don't know how. I don't necessarily know if that ties into the story or not. But yeah, I know what you're talking about, where we want to have kind of a balance of bad guys versus good guys. So when we do those final battle scenes, there's it's a better visually. But also, I was just wondering, because one of the things that I wanted to make the bad guys, because there's a whole war that I can't say that I created it, because I literally just kind of stole it from the Matrix, was and Terminator. There's a war that happens between man and machine, man versus AI, and I'm just wondering if Len would have any influence at all on robots, because robots can't do magic.
No, the only way that he would have control is over the people who wrote the code.
Right.
So could he find influence that way? Well, I don't know, but there's the juxtaposition too. Is once AI becomes AI, can they be persuaded?
Right.
By somebody like Len.
That's what I'm wondering.
So,
I mean,
and that's kind of like I was with the samurai. I thought it'd been interesting that if we had done that in a modern time, and the android was one of his lieutenants, one of Len's lieutenants or generals, and if Mariah had figured out that this child was something that was going to use to, or a special, or I don't know about child, just because I drew that child.
But we don't necessarily have to, because bad guys historically, you can have more than one.
Right.
I mean, the robots can still be bad guys. They're just their own team. They don't really.
That's true.
They would, if Len was standing in front of them, they would try to kill Len just like anybody else would try to kill Len. Good luck.
Well, the interesting too is
but yeah,
they're gonna come from a certain time period, and it's like so how does it work? Does he open time? Does he shatter time for like a 24-hour period on a certain day? Or is it for a 1-year period? So all the people from a year's worth of fighting, or is it just?
It's from a moment.
From a moment,
in
right?
Time.
So then you're just gonna have.
So those Nazis, for instance, were set up, ready for an ambush, and nothing changed as far as the forest around them or anything, because it was the same. Maybe the trees got a little taller.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the trees, some of the trees disappeared because they were cut down somewhere along but so literally most everything, especially the landscape, the hills and stuff, pretty much stayed the same, and the trees may have changed here or there, but the forest was still there. They were still ready to shoot, and then for that suddenly they're in literally in a different time period, because that's the one thing that I never could establish is was everybody grabbed from the past and yanked into the future, or was everybody grabbed from the future and the past and yanked into the?
Well, yeah, I just keep trying to think of,
because that's impossible to say.
Yeah, this is one of those after the thing afterwards hindsight.
Right.
Is you're like, well, wouldn't the sky be lit up with more than just a couple planes, and wouldn't there be flying cars and flying this, and
It's funny.
Would that whole countryside now be filled with buildings?
It's funny you said that because I often look at other writers' vision of the future. The Jetsons had a car that literally folded up into a briefcase and they'd fly around. But I honestly don't think man will ever have. I mean, they have the technology to do it, but I don't think that government will ever allow man to fly a car.
Mm. Well, they would if it was autonomous.
Right. That's the biggest punch in the gut. Also, because government doesn't trust people. I mean, it's a miracle that people drive cars. Literally a miracle. Because if the government would have had their way, they would have nixed that a long time ago, right when it was invented. Like, oh, you want to create roads everywhere? Well, that destroys the environment. That, blah, blah, blah. The whole world will be covered in blacktop. That's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Yada, yada, yada.
Well, it's amazing how how history changed over the years, I mean, we had roads through armies and supplies and this and that across the country. Mm-hmm. And not too many people traveled because of highway bandits, this, that, But as soon as the automobile, the West was a big expanse where people started moving across, but the automobile really allowed people to start moving, and we were just kind of okay with that. And now we have, I think, governments and stuff like that starting to realize, we don't want people moving around.
Right.
We want you to.
Yeah. But I don't think, because, like I said, I have no doubt that we could invent a flying car. But I don't think.
I think the hardest problem about flying car and any of that stuff right now is the same thing with, like, they say, we're going to have drones deliver everything. Mm-hmm. You know how loud the cacophony of just over.
Right. You'd walk outside and all you'd hear was.
It would just be so. You wouldn't be able to think straight because there'd be so many of them going. It's just so loud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Not only that, but I said this before. They talk about climate change and how much do cities heat up certain areas that weren't supposed to be heated in certain areas and from roads and blah 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 and just people.
Right.
And then can you imagine what would happen to air patterns with all those things sucking air in all different directions? Mm-hmm. It'd be crazy.
Right.
But
yeah.
No,
Anyway,
okay.
That was a tangent.
So right, that was a tangent. So, but so my thing though is you could do that almost. Where now time has changed, and we go and we learn these guys' history, and how these.
But that's what those
little pockets of areas have happened.
That's what those first scenes were supposed to be. Is them, because when there's scenes that you wrote that even predated where I started in the book, where you have some soldiers jumping out of a truck, and running to get into position and stuff. Time hadn't even shattered then. That was, those different time periods, these Nazi soldiers that are prepared for an ambush, they're looking down the sights of their guns, ready to go, and literally, blam, suddenly, instead of seeing, British soldiers or whatever, they see British soldiers on horseback wearing armor from medieval times.
Well, it's just like, so my mind was going crazy because it's like, it'd be kind of interesting. What about a soldier down on the end, and all of a sudden, a road starts materializing, and then splat, a truck goes by. You know what I mean? Vroom, vroom, vroom.
It's possible. But the good news is that, and one of the reasons that I chose Britain to put a lot of these different things there is because if I would have chose someplace like the Middle East, which has had more wars fought on that soil than any other place on the planet. Mm-hmm. The Middle East, if I would have chose to have, to start the book there, holy crap. Yeah, you would have had to been drawing all this stuff literally materializing on top of each other to where, people are accidentally getting hit by tanks and run over, you see a bunch of guys on horses with, sabers running, and then they get hit by a plane, it would have been crazy. But luckily, there has been, quite a few battles fought in Britain, but not enough to where it's that chaotic.
Yeah, but we had to move it. We moved it to France.
Well, you mean the first book?
Yeah.
Well, Normandy, yes, is in France.
It's in France.
But when they go to...
But the no Nazi soldiers are ever on...
I know.
On English soil. No. You can't say you want to do history stuff and then not do history.
You don't know if there wasn't a battalion that was sent there
secretly.
Do.
Yes, we do.
No, shut up.
No.
They could have landed, and we never knew about it.
No, that's why where we have it is in a good spot. I think where something could have happened, but yet it shouldn't be so overly.
Yeah, they could have went to Normandy, and that might have been where.
It's not even in Normandy. It's up. It's northern France.
Right.
It's east of Paris.
Right.
It's north of Paris. It's northwest of Paris, actually.
But I mean, that's that could easily be where he went on sabbatical. So,
yeah.
So they might have been traveling to get to a boat.
That's what I had. That's what I had figured. They were crossing the land to get to
the boat to
go back to England.
Yep.
But I was like, wait, Cardiff. And I was scaling back and forth up Normandy Beach trying to find where Cardiff was, and like that sounds like England, doesn't it?
I just pulled it out of my ass.
So I typed it in. It was like, not just England, it's the east side of England. It's like up by
anyway.
I can't think of the name of the city, but Manchester, I think. It's up by Manchester. And I was like, wait, how did Nazis get there?
Doesn't matter.
Yes, it does. It doesn't matter. This is the guy who everything's hinged on, William the Conqueror.
Right.
Doesn't matter. Well, this makes me feel good though about book one, because now I can go ahead and kind of really plan it,
right, and
know exactly how many pages, so that as we start drawing them and working them up, and as we start building up our fan base, because we'll know exactly what we can offer for a Kickstarter now. For that first book. And
that scene,
we can figure out the rest of it later.
That scene where he ends up fighting Len and stuff. That and also the diary, I think, is important. So yeah, we need to do something. Like you said, we need to definitely spend more time on developing Len.
And even if you wanted to, I could see opening up the second book too with the little boy lost in the woods. And him training and learning the discipline of how to wield and combine magic and from Migno and their first encounter with the Wood Watchers, with that whole battle and then that whole thing where he gets magically saved from her Helena. Mm-hmm. That'd be a pretty interesting opening. I mean, it'd be long.
It is an interesting opening. I mean, literally.
So you know what I mean. Though that'd be kind of an interesting thing. And then it's like, learn more about Lucius there.
Right. Fun. Hey, should I go through chapter 13 real quick here? It's already 3:30. Anyway,
and then like if you get 2/3 through the way, whatever, or half the way, and then do something like 6,000 miles. I don't know how many thousand miles away it is to Japan.
Right.
And do Mariah's story happening at the same time that Lucia's story is happening.
Right.
That would be kind of cool. And then have him doing something.
But his story's not as deep as Lucia's.
Well, no, but then
that's why it was easier to.
Time shatters again.
Right.
And brings us back into shattered time.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. It was easier though to just include it as a little side story. Because eventually they'll meet up.
Right.
Okay, here we go.
You're going to read?
Chapter 13, The Goblin War. Hey, King Marcon pushes himself into a sitting position, looking around at his throne room. His wife and
what their names are.
His wife and servants are lying on the white marble floor, as well as looking around in confusion. Dust hangs in the air, and the furniture in the room has been tossed about and overturned by the fall. "Sire, are you all right?" a nearby servant asked, pulling the king by the arm to help him stand. "Yes, help my queen first," the king says, pulling his arm away from the servant. Servants rush to help the queen, gathering her gown up and placing her on her feet. The female servants brush off her dress and tidy her hair, making her look untouched by the tragedy of the fall. The doors to the throne room burst open and a herd of flaming swords enters the room. The two guards at the door never even have a chance to turn around. Flames streak across their bodies and they fall to the ground as 4 chunks of flaming flesh and muscle. The servants scatter, looking for a way out of the room. In the confusion, many of them fall victim to the flaming swords of the goblin invaders. King Marcon draws his sword while pushing his queen toward the back wall. He sends a tornado into the goblin soldiers, scattering them among the furniture and corpses. The tornado blocks the soldiers, forming a wall of dust and shrapnel. King Marcon uses the moment to aid his wife. "Are you all right, my queen?" he asks, gently cradling her face with his free hand, while his other hand grips his sword. "Yes, my lord," she says, her words shaking as she tries to stifle the tears which have started to roll down her face. "It will be okay. Nothing will harm you," the king says, wiping the tears away from her eyes. "Now we must get out of here." "But how?" The queen screams in terror, staring towards the tornado. Marcon turns to see what has frightened her. The tornado wall has small tunnels leading through it, and the goblin soldiers are marching through them. As they reach the other side, the openings close. The king stares at his attackers, lifting his sword to a ready position. "I never should have let the school teach the goblins magic." He rushes into them, swinging his sword as they parry and thrust. He fights his way into a group of 6 of them, looking for an opening, but his fight is cut short when he hears his lover scream again. The queen is in the corner of the room, 2 goblins standing in front of her, flaming swords held threateningly to her throat. The king parries one last goblin sword and stops his fighting. The goblins surround him, again swords ready to attack. Marcon drops his sword. It clangs loudly off the marble, echoing through the room. "Please, I will not resist. Do not harm her." 2 of the goblin soldiers grab the king, drag him across the room, slam him against the wall, and shackle his arms and legs. He looks along the wall at his bride as if he were trying to tell her with his eyes that he is sorry. Tears pour from her eyes as the shackles are snapped around her husband's ankles. The king trembles as he stares at her as though he were studying every curve of her face, the light color of her skin, the sparkle in her eyes. The sparkle from her eyes grows brighter as a flash of flame crosses the king's field of vision. The sparkle fades from her eyes and she stares blankly ahead as though she were looking through her lover. Her head shifts and slumps forward. The king can do nothing but watch as her head continues its downward movement and falls to the floor with a hollow thump.
Yikes.
Yeah. Paul, Mikno, Stellick, and Stern ride frantically through the woods, spurring their horses. The horses have been relieved of all of their previous supply bags to allow for more speed. They ride toward the smoke, toward the city, toward the flame, toward the castle. The outside of the wall of the city is still standing, but only flames can be seen on the other side. They stop at the edge of the woods to survey the scene. The red dragons lay around the city wall, resting as a cat does after it kills its prey. One eye still open. The goblin sentries patrol the grounds amongst the dozing dragons. The grassy green fields outside the city walls have the large scorch marks and zigzag patterns, and smoldering remains of elven soldiers and centaurs litter the landscape. I don't think we will be getting in there, Paul remarks, surveying the entrance to the city, which has been sealed by a wall of dirt. I need to find Lucius, Mikno responds. Paul stares at Mikno's serious face and responds, I'm open to ideas. You got any? Mikno continues to stare at the dragons and the goblin soldiers moving around in front of the smoldering city and then responds, Yes, we need help. Let's go find some. Izzy, Taser, Max, Sheena, Kate, Kara wait impatiently outside the halfling village for Paul and Mikno's return. The 6 of them stare at each other in silence, unwilling to show any fear, as the distant sounds of explosions and billowing clouds of dark smoke fill the air. Izzy glances down at a faint path leading out of the halfling village as if expecting to see something. After a minute of staring, she kneels down and places her ear to the ground, listening intently. The group watches Izzy, most of them seemingly calm, but Sheena rolls her eyes at the scene and begins to bounce up and down on the balls of her feet. I think we should just go, she suggests, glancing down the path leading out of the halfling village. Go where? We don't know what is happening at the castle, Max retorts, pointing to the clouds of smoke which blacken the sky as they escape through the top of the mountain. Staying here is crazy, Kate and Kara respond, looking around at the halfling village, their faces expressing concern for the halflings that they have spent so much time with. I know what you're feeling. I'm worried about the halflings too. We'll have to stay here until they get back. It's the only way we will find out what happened, Max demands. Quiet, here they come, Izzy announces from her kneeling position. Horses rush out of the woods. Paul doesn't bother to stop his horse. He just leaps off as it slows down, landing steadily on his feet. The castle is gone. Goblin warriors. Everyone responds with a gasp. We need to go get some help, Paul finishes. Help? Where will we find help for this? Izzy asks. Mikno approaches after he has dismounted his horse. We need to go back to your house. There are soldiers there. 3 of them, Max says with disgust. That's a start, Paul answers as he grabs some bags from the ground and tethers them to his saddle. We are not soldiers, but we will help. We must avenge the fallen people in the castle, Taser announces. No, we don't. No, we don't want to destroy all of the help we've helped you build, Max responds. If the goblins are attacking, our fate is to be slaves again. We must fight to protect all we have built. Yeah, kid. Don't you want a little payback? You are related to the king, aren't you? Paul remarks, handing Stellick and Stern, who are still on their horses, their rucksacks. We must not waste any more time. Gather what you need. All are welcome. We travel to the tavern, Migno announces, leaping onto his horse. Taser's face glows with pride as he hears the words. All except for Izzy seem to be relieved to leave the halfling village. It is deep into the night when they reach the tavern. Izzy, Stellick, Stern, Taser, Max, Sheena, Kate, and Kara wait in the tavern while Paul gathers the guards and Migno ventures to Jezzy's house to wake her. Paul is stopped in front of the guard tower by a broad-shouldered elven guard whose face is painted with a green X. He is holding a staff in his hands as he approaches Paul. Hi, Vin. We need you over at the tavern. We have news to discuss, Paul says to the guard as he points to the tavern over his shoulder. You can't just tell me? Vin asks, looking slightly worried as he notices Paul's chainmail armor and full set of weapons. What is it? I need all your help. Since when do you need help? A voice says from the door of the guard tower. A short, stout, dwarvish-looking elf is standing in the doorway of the guard tower. He has a green face paint around his eyes, making him look like a raccoon. Looking to the door, Paul exclaims, Taz, how are you? Good, Taz says as he shakes Paul's hand. I didn't know you were here. Yes, I'm in charge now, can you believe it? Taz says, proudly smiling and placing his hand triumphantly on his hips. Who would have ever believed that? Paul declares, sarcastically looking down upon the elf. After a short period of handshaking and laughing, Taz says, So why are you all here and all dressed up? What's wrong? Migno knocks on the door of Jezzy's house. She opens the door, surprised to see that it is Migno standing in the threshold of her door. He pulls back his hood. His pearly white face seems to glow in the darkness, and in the solemn tone he says, Hello, Jezzy. Jezzy stares around in the night as if looking for someone else. What are you doing here? Where's Izzy? What's going on? Jezzy asks, clearly fearful of the answer. Everyone is over at the tavern. I'll explain over there. If the king is still alive, we must save him, Taz announces, pacing back and forth among the other worried-looking people inside the tavern. We need more soldiers. We can't rescue anyone with just this many, Vin remarks, leaning heavily on his staff. We just need a way in, Paul says calmly from his seated position at one of the tables. He removes his helmet and smiles as Izzy arrives by his side with a tray of 3 tankards for him and the twins. Then what? Will you kill all the dragons yourself? Max asks sarcastically as he stares disgustedly at Paul, who is taking a hearty swig from his drink. Paul stares coldly at Max as he lowers his tankard. You can just hide here with the other women, he says with a grin. Max's eyes light with fury as he looks as if he's ready to scold Paul, but before he can say anything, Migno interjects. Stop. We need to concentrate on a plan, not on bickering. We might find help in the forest town, Jezzy announces, taking a seat next to Migno, across from Paul and the twins. That'll be the goblins' next target. We can't risk going there, Paul replies. We have to start somewhere, Jezzy replies in a high, shaky voice. We need to do something, she concludes, turning quickly away to wipe the newly forming tears from her face. Come on, Jezzy, don't worry. We'll get into the city. We'll find Lucius, Paul says apologetically. What about my cousin, the king? What about the people? She says, looking up at Paul, tears streaking her makeup. Paul sits up straighter in his chair and stares meaningfully into Jezzy's eyes before answering. Jezzy, Have I ever failed you before? After Jesse shakes her head no, he continues, I will get into the castle and I will save the king. The castle is gone. How do we get into something that is no longer there? Max asks snidely. Don't you have a dress to try on or something, boy? Paul remarks, turning away from Jesse. Listen, vermin, I'm not the one who slinks into the woods living off the scraps of garbage you managed to steal, Max hollers enraged. Paul's chair rockets backwards as he jumps to his feet. His hand is a blur of movement, and his hand snaps toward Max, and a glimmering steel streaks from Paul's hands across the table towards its target. The dagger is an inch from Max's face when it is snatched from the air by Mikno. Max looks ready to retaliate, but is cut short when Mikno shoves him hard to the floor. He stares up at Mikno, with a stunned expression, seeming to ask the question, why? Mikno shakes his head at him and holds his hand out, motioning for him to stop. Max's face and body seem to deflate at that moment. He calmly crosses his leg in the lotus position and gazes solemnly at the floor. How do we get past the dragons? Vin asks, breaking the uneasy silence in the room. Dig, Mikno answers, handing Paul his dagger. Dig? Yes, we can tunnel under them to where the castle used to be. They must have come up through the ground. The castle is well guarded from every other kind of attack. The castle might still be partially intact. Yeah? That would mean that there could be thousands of goblins down there waiting for us, Taz exclaims. Yeah, how do we get past them? Max asks, looking up from the floor at everyone. Taz looks embarrassed as everyone stares in annoyment at Max. Never mind what I said. We will find a way, he says, smoothing his yellow braids nervously. I welcome any better ideas, Mikno maintains. No one says anything as he looks from person to person. Okay, since we have no other options, let's prepare. We leave in the morning. Everyone hurriedly prepares himself or herself, packing what they consider important. Mikno takes a seat at the bar next to Jesse. Where's Izzy? Mikno asks. I sent her out back to the house with the rest of those girls. I was going to tell her she couldn't go back to the school after what she had done. Now I guess I don't have to, Jesse replies. Everything will be fine, Jez, Mikno replies, grabbing a small glass and a bottle of green-colored liquid from in front of Jesse. No, I can't accept your word. Things don't get much worse than this. We've lost a king, a castle, and most importantly, Lucius, Jez responds, her sadness turning to rage. The other voices in the room quiet momentarily at the sound of Jesse's outburst, but Mikno seems unfazed by it and continues to calmly pour his drink. They aren't lost. I will find Lucius, he says calmly before drinking the green liquor in one shot. Jesse glances around the room, and after everyone begins talking normally, she replies quietly, He's like a son to me, Mickey. To me as well. I promise I will find him. Lucius hangs from a Lucius hangs from a metal slab, shackles binding his ankles and wrists. A small fire is burning in the middle of a darkened room. As he looks around, Lucius can see he is not alone. Elven citizens, halflings, workers, and a few elemental students are shackled to other slabs along a dirt wall. But the dim light makes identification impossible. The wall next to him begins to move, forming an opening. 3 goblin males enter and move across the room, looking at each hanging figure on the wall. As they pass into a shadow across the room from Lucius, he hears a deep, scratchy voice he recognizes as Cain. When I get down from here, you're all dead. Well then, I guess we will make sure you die first, one of the goblins reply. Lucius hears Cain spit at the goblin and the sound of the goblins beating Cain. Cain never screams or makes any noise as they beat him repeatedly. The goblins stop their attack after nearly a minute and resume their search. Their search stops when they reach Lucius. That's him. Are you sure? Take a good look. Can't you tell he's human? I've never seen one before. Would you just grab him and come on? The goblins yank Lucius from the wall and drag him through the opening, which closes behind them. Paul, Stellick, Stern, Max, Taser, and Vin watch Mikno and Taz dig a hole in the earth near the edge of the woods, away from the view of the city walls. I think we should treat this like a scouting mission, Paul exclaims, untying his sword from his saddle and looping it around his waist. He tugs the leather strap on his chest plate and the armor to make sure they are secure over the top of his chainmail shirt. I agree, we need to find the king, Vin responds, tying his platinum hair back out of his green X-painted face. He runs his hands down the front of his chest, reassuring himself that his chainmail armor is still there. We need to keep a lookout for weaknesses, Mikno adds as he continues concentrating on digging. When we have enough information, we will know where to strike, Paul concludes, looping his bow over his shoulder with a quiver of arrows. As the other warriors of the group are busy gathering their weapons and securing their armor, Stellick and Stern are acting quite different. They are standing face to face with each other, their chainmail armor lying in a pile at their feet. They have their long red hair braided in two large ponytails behind their head, and as they face each other, they smear black, muddy-looking substance on each other's faces. Taser watches them curiously as they paint each other with the thick mud. When they seem to be finished, he asks them, "Aren't you going to wear your armor?" They look at him, seemingly surprised that they were being addressed. "We only wear it when there is a danger of arrows," Stern replies. "And we will make sure there is less noise this way," Stellick adds. "I see. And the mud is to hide you in the caverns?" "That's pretty clever," Taser deduces. Stellick surveys Taser's clothing. He is dressed well in comfortable-looking pants, a long-sleeve shirt, and gold-buttoned red vest. "What about you? What weapons do you prefer?" "I'm not a warrior. I have no weapons." Stellick glances over to where Max is standing. He grins and turns back to Taser. "We should have known he wouldn't teach you anything of importance." "He has helped my people prosper." "Yes, but he left you unguarded and unprepared for war," Stern remarks, pulling his tri-blade punch daggers out from their sheath and holding them out for display. Max's attention focuses on this exchange. Taser replies to the twins, "I am willing to fight, and I'm not scared of death." "Yes, we can see you are not the one who is scared," Stellick says, his yellow eyes staring intently at Max. Max glowers at them, but is clearly unwilling to advance. Taser again defends Max. "He is my friend, and I will not listen to insults regarding him." Stellick and Stern turn back to Taser and bow apologetically to him. "Okay, let's go, everyone," Mikno shouts from the opening of the tunnel, which wasn't there a moment ago. They enter the tunnel as a group. Once inside, the tunnel closes. The dark trip seems to take forever. No torches are lit to conserve oxygen. Mikno steers the tunnel to where the classrooms are located beneath the city, breaking through into the dark and deserted beginner's classroom. Taz pulls out his cold necklace, lighting the room and verifying the room is empty. Thank God, I thought I was going to suffocate in there, Paul says, breathing in deeply. It was starting to get pretty stale. The tunnels are vented, though, right? He asks. Migno nods affirmative to Paul, and then moves to the exit of the room. The castle is located about 20 yards that way. This is part of the school, he reveals. We can use this room as a camp, Paul declares, placing his pack on the floor. Let's not waste any more time, Taz demands as he walks down the tunnel leading to the castle, a flame burning in one hand and a sword in another. They follow the tunnel and find the white marble wall of the castle. Looks like the second floor of the castle, Taz surmises as he taps it with the blade of his sword. Should we risk making an opening? Migno asks, staring at the wall as it glows eerily from the reflection of Taz's flame. If someone sees it, we'll be captured, Max announces. Paul side glances disgustedly at him and rolls his eyes. Max exhales angrily as he turns to face Paul. I know you think me a coward, but I'm not. I'm just trying to be cautious, he shouts angrily. Are you trying to convince me or yourself? Paul remarks. Sir, Taser says, tugging at Migno's robes. Yes, Taser, Migno replies. I know this castle well, since I used to work here. If this is the second floor, there is a window to the grand dining room just a few paces down the wall. We could use it. The throne room isn't too far from the dining room. Let's go, Taz declares. Inside the throne room, 5 goblin soldiers rummage through a pile of assorted treasure and valuables, apparently collected from different rooms throughout the castle. Large, crooked grins split their faces as they move around the pile, looking down their enormous, pointy noses and at the sparkling treasure. They occasionally pause to try on rings and necklaces found in the pile. Look at this one of the goblins announces, struggling to hold up a giant golden goblet. His skinny, slightly bent legs shudder under the weight. I could bathe in this. The other goblins burst into laughter at the statement. Some of them toss handfuls of treasure into the air, laughing gleefully as it falls to the ground like golden rain. You would think that a race of such size would be harder to conquer. You think that they actually drank out of that? Don't be stupid. It looks like it's just for show. The goblin heaves the giant cup to the ground. What a waste of gold. Think of all the jewelry you could make from it, he says, holding out his hands and admiring the rings on his long, bony fingers. Their size doesn't matter. They are all cowards, hiding behind their magic. They think it'll stop people from attacking, one goblin says, picking up a golden loop and examining it. Ooh, this one will go well with my new outfit, he says, looping it through a hole in his donkey-like ear. Magic. Ha! We've learned their magic. Our science is stronger. They were no match for our new army and our new weapons. Did you see them run from our swords? All the goblins nod affirmative to the question without pausing their search of the pile. They continue rummaging through the treasure, boasting of their victory, unaware of their visitors just outside the door. Paul leans against the wall next to the opening of the throne room, tightly gripping a double-edged dagger in his hands. 4, maybe 5, he whispers to the others. Stellick and Stern unsheath their weapons. Taz silently draws his 2 short swords, while Vin stands ready with his short staff. Migno looks to Max and Taser and whispers, "You 2 stay in the back with me. We will help where we can." Stellick and Stern are the first to burst into the room, rushing towards the first body they see. 3 of the 5 goblins watch in horror as their 2 companions closest to the door are tackled to the floor by Stellick and Stern. Their skinny bodies twitch and shake, but the only noise coming from them is the gurgle and splash of blood spouting from their gaping neck wounds. The 3 remaining goblins begin to draw their swords. 2 of them succeed. The other catches Paul's dagger with his chest and falls to the floor, grasping his new wound in shock. The last 2 goblins, though armed, scramble for the exit on the opposite end of the room. Taz and Vin hurl their weapons at the fleeing adversaries. Taz's short sword enters the base of the goblin's skull and penetrates through the front of his neck, while Vin's staff streaks through the air like a javelin, hammering the last goblin in the back of the head, knocking him to the ground. His flaming sword clangs across the marble floor. The goblin is shocked back to consciousness when a cold water splashes onto his face. Clearly shocked by the sight of dwarves and elves surrounding him, he tries to push himself from the floor, only to find he is bound at the ankles and wrists. He shakes his head, getting rid of the water on his face, and looks around at the bodies of his dead companions. "I'm going to ask you a question. You give me the right answer, or I cut off a finger. Do you understand?" Taz demands as he grabs the goblin's bound hands and pulls the dagger from his belt. "Where is the king?" The goblin stares at the raccoon-like face of Taz, clearly hoping for some sign of mercy. "He has been taken down into the Goblin Kingdom. He will be publicly executed tomorrow in celebration of our victory," the goblin answers in a shaky voice as he stares at the dagger pressed against his finger. "You haven't won yet," Taz declares as he cuts off the goblin's finger. The goblin screams in pain as his finger plunks to the floor. Now where is the Goblin King? Now where is the Goblin Kingdom? Where in the Goblin Kingdom is he being held? Taz asks, placing his blade on the next finger. Deep in the Goblin Kingdom, a crowd of anxious goblins gather around the front of a giant metal castle. They jeer and holler as whip-wielding goblin lashes a figure on the front of the castle. King Markon screams in pain as a leather strap snaps across his chest. His body convulses in pain, pulling against the spikes hammered through his forearms and ankles. He stares up at the bloody spike protruding from his wrist and takes a deep, calming breath. His breathing slows as the flow of blood from the wound stops. Slowly his blood trickles back up his arm and into the wound from which it came. Crack! The whip lashes his body again, causing another spasm of pain, and the blood begins to pump out of his wrist and wound again. Laughter erupts from the small pointy-eared crowd of slouching figures around him. "Aw, do you find it hard to concentrate?" the goblin with the whip asks, shouting above the laughter as he is playfully slapped on the back by the people from the crowd. King Markon glances briefly around the crowd from his elevated position on the castle wall, but doesn't respond. He takes another deep breath and stares once again at his wrists. The blood begins to retreat up to his arm. Crack! The towering iron castle fills almost the entire... The towering iron castle fills the massive cavern located deep in the earth. The streams of lava are the only source of light, and they cast an eerie glow on the dull metal of the castle. Goblins and giant red dragons move in and out of the numerous tunnels leading into and out of the main cavern. Many of the dragons carry gold and ore from the tunnels through an oversized door in the side of the castle. High above the castle, a new tunnel is forming. Taz stares down from the new tunnel, his face agape with horror as he stares at his tortured king. "We have to rescue him," he says, turning his face to his comrades. "He's out in the open, how would we?" Max replies, drawing away from the opening after taking a quick look. "The king is the only hope we have. Our people will not fight without a leader," Macno conveys. people. All of your strongest warriors have been killed or captured, Paul announces, searching the wall leading down to the castle with his eyes. Yes, the people who are still alive are not warriors. They will need a leader to give them strength, Mignos states. Okay, it's agreed. We need the king, but I'll ask again, how do we rescue him when he's out in the open? Max asks from his sitting position several yards away from the opening and the rest of the party. We need a distraction, Paul replies. I have a way, Taser declares from his position at the front of the opening. Everyone seems almost startled as they focus their attention on the halfling leader. Taser swallows and continues. We need to create a distraction big enough to get the goblin army out of here. If another army was to attack them, you could rescue the king. That sounds great, but what army do you have that will fight against their dragons? Paul asks. When I was a slave, the goblins were trying to domesticate dragons. In true goblin fashion, there were first attempts to make contact with the dragons was to bring them gifts. Halflings, it seemed, were the perfect gift. What giant creature wouldn't want a free meal? Our masters drug us down into the deepest reaches of the earth by the hundreds. The search for the correct tunnels lasted for weeks, but they finally found flocks of dragons soaring around in the stalactites in an immeasurable cave located near the giant oceans of magma. Their plan worked. They would tether us together and leave us out in the open to entice any passing dragons. Group after group were consumed. There were so many different kinds, so many different colors, green, red, gray. But it was the gold dragons that became a problem for them, Taser says, suddenly beaming around at everyone. What happened? Stern asks, his yellow eyes wide in anticipation. The goblins had gathered us into a group again. It was finally my turn to be sacrificed. They had been having some success with the red dragons that kept returning. They figured it wouldn't be long before they could tempt it out of there and up to the goblin kingdom. I stood huddled against other halflings praying for some way out of my bindings. Then a shadow fell across our group. As a giant shaped dove from above us, I braced for death, but was shook by the tremor of something landing in front of our party. It wasn't the red returning, but a mammoth gold dragon. We were surprised not to be eaten, but even more surprised when it spoke. Spoke? Yes, spoke. Well, what did it say? It stared down at us for several minutes before looking around and roaring toward the tunnel opening. Where are the masters hidden? Come here. It stared down at us and roaring toward the tunnel opening. Where are the masters hidden? Come here. Very cautiously, our goblin masters emerged from the cave. And then what? Well, the conversation wasn't very long. The gold dragons demanded them to leave and said if they were to ever set foot back in there again, they would be killed. Why? Well, the gold or aureate dragons, which they like to be called, have been alive since the beginning of the earth. They are immortal, but are not able to reproduce. They are born spontaneously from the other species of dragons. How do you know all this? Taser just smiles and continues. They are intelligent, perhaps even more so than we are, and they are sworn to protect the dragons from extinction. When they saw what the goblins were attempting to do, they were furious. So how's this going to help us? Paul asks. The goblins have succeeded in domesticating red dragons. If the aureate dragons found out, they would be furious. Furious enough to help? Taser nods his head. How would we ever contact them? I know the way. It is through the tunnel past the mines, Taser says, pointing to a tunnel past the Iron Castle. We would never make it, Max declares. But I could. I could move freely down there. I just need to look like a slave. I could free my people, and the Goblin army would rush to stop us. Do you believe you can win against the Goblin army? Taz asked. If you had seen the size of the Oriate dragons, you wouldn't ask such a thing. Well, how long do you need? Migno asked. It would take a day to travel. Since I know the way, Taser removes his nice clothing, leaving it behind with the others, smears dirt on his undershirt and rips his underpants. He easily walks through the Goblin Kingdom, lowering his head and avoiding any large groups of goblins. He joins a line of halflings marching into the tunnels. He joins a line of halflings marching into the tunnels, following a red dragon, which has been saddled with a set of large sacks for carrying ore. The tunnel splits into many branches. Some of the side tunnels have been carved, and others have been blocked off by chain barriers. The tunnel widens, and a rapid succession of pinging and clinging noises reverberate in the tunnels from hundreds of halflings picking away at the rock walls. Each halfling in the newly arriving group grabs a pickaxe from the pile near the entrance and moves to any available space along the wall. Taser joins them and begins to dig frantically into the wall. The halfling beside him, one male and one female, can't help but to stop and stare at him. What are you doing? The female asks him, wiping sweat from her brow. If you keep up that tempo, you'll be dropping dead. Taser keeps swinging, but answers the halfling's query. I need to look like I have been working all day. Why? You just barely got here, she asks. I know, but I need to be able to sneak away when the group is excused, Taser says over the sounds of his hammering. Well, that sounds pretty selfish to me. Why should we let you get away with that? The male halfling says, gesturing to the female. You don't understand. I'm doing this for everyone, Taser says, slamming his pick down hard and turning to the two halflings. Yeah, right. Likely that is, the male halfling says as his hands, raising his hand and waving toward a goblin guard. Taser quickly grabs him and pulls it down. Wait, listen. I'm here to set us free. Yeah, you, and how are you going to do that? He asks, stepping back and crossing his arms. The goblins have attacked the elves, Taser says, turning back around so he is facing the wall and holding his pick as though he were working. Tell us something we don't know, the female says, moving back to her pick and picking it up. I'm here with a group of warriors, Taser says, quietly glancing towards the guards, making sure they haven't noticed the three halflings stopped working. Really? And they're here to free us. Why? What good would that do? The male halfling asks, swinging his pickaxe again, chipping off a piece of the wall. It's just for distraction, if you must know, Taser says, starting to swing hurriedly again. Well, I guess that sounds believable. Okay, but if you get caught, we won't help you. You're on your own for all we care, the female remarks, and she too begins to chip away at the wall. The halflings sleep and eat in the caves next to the dig site. It was the only community they have. Taser makes his way through the rows of piled straw and cloth, which the halfling slaves used as their beds, to a small tunnel hidden in the back of a cave, the tunnel that would lead to the Oriate dragons. After Taser and his people studied the dragon's language, they were always looking for a way to convince them to help. They tried gifts of gold, food, but nothing seemed to work. dragons only cared about dragons. Knowing this to be true, Taser told them the goblins had succeeded in domesticating red dragons. The Oriate dragons were appalled by this news. It wasn't acceptable that any dragon should become a slave. They agreed to help free all the slaves and to destroy any signs that dragons were ever domesticated. The halflings have been preparing for the upcoming war by making and hiding weapons throughout the mines. They didn't have enough weapons yet, but the time for waiting was over. Taser had no choice but to start the attack. And that brings us into chapter 14. Yay! So what were you drawing? Is that a goblin?
Yeah.
Those flaming swords he's carrying?
Swords.
Well, they're supposed to be flaming.
Okay.
All of their technology and stuff is based on dragons. And in the book, dragons secrete a venom that when it contacts air, it turns into flames. And so they, I guess you could say, harvest this venom from the red dragons, and they have a little vial at the base of their blade. And so they just have to kind of like push a button which releases the venom, and as soon as it touches the sword, as it runs down the blade of the sword, it bursts into flames. So yeah, fun stuff. Well, crap. It's already 4:20.
You have somewhere to go?
Yep. Somewhere to go. Well, cool. Yeah. I like the new digs.
Yeah?
Yep.
Well, that's good. It's cool to have everything up.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it'd be too tight for you in there, but...
No, it works. I mean, because I'm facing the camera.
Yeah.
I'm also facing you. Except when that computer screen is...
In a way.
Yeah, being...
I just noticed that when I put the thing, I was like, you can't see me. Not that that's important, but...
No.
No.
I just scream over.
Hey. I just remember when you said that somebody liked to see over my shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many cameras can be actually used, but, you know, if it was a perfect, it would be one camera over my shoulder, one camera over your shoulder facing me, you know, so it would be a view, you know, our point of view, and then a side camera that would get both of us in the shot. But then you'd have to have a producer clicking buttons.
Clicking buttons, yeah.
We don't have a producer clicking buttons.
That we do not.
So we got 2 cameras, that's it.
We low budget.
Yeah.
Low budget.
Right. But still sometimes I think the to have a third camera, you know, especially if you had a third camera, you know, so you could, you know, because like earlier you picked up that camera to show the stuff on the wall.
Right.
You know, but to have that third camera so you could see everything would be kind of neat. So is that, because you brought over the books from the other room.
Right.
And what else did you bring over?
Brought most of the books, the movies.
Because that...
And there's a bunch of paper back here.
Was that...
There was 2 pieces. It was
right.
taller.
Yeah, it was taller.
Yeah. That's where it was right next to you.
Right.
Yeah, so we were going to leave half of it over there for him, But after we moved everything, we noticed that the bottom legs had buckled. I was like, how did that happen? I don't know. But so
extreme weight. So, yeah.
We he didn't have that in his room now. But
so how's his room? I'll have to look at it before I leave.
We found somebody was giving away one of those like race car beds.
Nice.
Big, huge, plasticky Little Giants race car bed.
Right. How's he like it?
He hasn't actually gotten in it yet. We don't have a comforter. We don't have. She's waiting for, I think, a comforter for him.
But
well,
I mean,
he has tons of blankets.
It has the mattress and everything, though.
Yeah, we went and bought a mattress for it, but it didn't come with the mattress. But they gave us it was given away for free, so
cool.
We just went and grabbed it and strapped it to the top of the car and brought it back and had some of it jammed in the inside because it was actually a lot bulkier than we thought it was going to be. And yeah, he needs to start sleeping in there.
Yeah, it's that time.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
but
this works good.
And then I kept on going back and forth how to arrange this room, but I wanted to have that wall for that.
Right.
And so I was like, this seems to be the best way to
it worked out good
to do it, so that if I position the camera better, then you can see some of the stuff behind me. And
yep.
I was gonna have stuff for behind you, more artwork and stuff, but
eventually
it didn't quite. I printed out that one with Lucius and the werewolf thing, that thing I did.
Yeah.
But apparently we don't have enough ink, and it came out just pink.
Nice.
All one little washed out color.
Yep.
I had that trace the Shattered Time logo up there. I had to trace that.
Oh.
And put it up there for that.
That's still a cool freaking logo, man.
It's kind of cool. All right. Well, thanks for hanging around. We appreciate it.
BurntOutStudios.com. Go there. We try to put all our stories and stuff there.
Jam Spoon on Instagram.
Yeah. And so next week is kind of weird because I have a Sunday Monday off coming up, which once again weekends I try to spend with my kids. So maybe Monday we'll see you.